Many of you have been programmed into feeding your pets kibble.
Must buy kibble.
But by the end of this video, that's going to change.
Listen up, listen up, listen.
So in order to show you this, we're going to go ahead and deep dive into the history of kibble and also what dogs were actually eating before kibble was even invented. For ages, dogs hunted and even ate table scraps. What were they hunting, you might ask, in the 1860s? Cities like New York, they would hunt for mice, rats, or even New York rats. And if you're from New York, you know the difference. No way! This all changed in 1860 when an electrician by the name of James Spratt actually visited London. He originally went over there trying to sell lighting rods. However, being the entrepreneur that he was, while there he saw dogs actually waiting for sailors to throw them some stale biscuits to eat. Just like that, James Spratt had an idea. He invented what was known as the Fabrine dog cake. The biscuits were very similar to what the sailors were throwing out, except he also added vegetables, beetroot, and meat. He targeted an elite crowd with his marketing techniques. Where did I hear that before? And he even used new marketing techniques for the time, such as billboards. Fabrine dog cakes were actually one of the most advertised products of the 20th century. The company pioneered the concept of live stages. In 1907, another company started to compete, and they were producing a product by the name of milk bones. I'm sure you've heard of those or seen those out in the market today. Well, 1918 rolled around, and dog food was actually being made from horse meat. If you compare that to what's being fed today, you would realize that was the golden age for dog food. In 1918, World War I had just ended, and technology like cars and tractors eliminated the need for horses. This created a surplus of horses, obviously, and a man by the name of P.M. Chappelle saw the opportunity to buy real cheap horse meat and sold the first canned dog food by the name of Kennel ration. They promoted their food as using lean, red, government-inspected meat. Love how they set up the advertising.
With lean red meat.
This food was heavily advertised and was actually known for their jingle. My dog is bigger than your dog.
My dog's bigger than your dog. Kennel ration has lean red meat and lots of other good things. My dog's better than yours.
I know there's a dog breed out there that actually thinks this way. Never mind, let's continue. And it was even sponsored by Disney's pet motel known as Kennel Land. Fast forward 23 years later. In 1941 came the advent of dry dog food.
New Gaines Multi-Menu, the new dog food that comes in 3 meat varieties, but not in a can. Beef, liver, chicken. 1 packet equals 1 can.
The kibble that we know today was born. In World War II, necessity became the mother of all inventions for the pet food industry. All available metal was actually sent over for the war efforts, which meant that the metal that was being used to make canned dog food was no longer available. So companies innovated in order to keep up with demand and found that by using byproducts from cereal manufacturers, they could add a shelf-stable food that could actually be sold in bags. So this led to the first dry dog foods. The ability to create a dry, cheap food with high profit margins began attracting larger corporations. Wouldn't you know it? And by this time, you already know, typical Americans, people were taking notice and we were sold on the convenience of it. It only took 45 years for pet food companies to convince the average American that pet food should be the only food your pet should eat, and that dry kibble was actually the best option for your pet in the 1950s. So let's fast forward to 1956.
1966, pick up sticks.
This is actually starting to get pretty good. The first kibble was actually produced through extrusion. So what is extrusion, you may ask? We'll get to that in a second. Let me just say that General Mills, yes, General Mills, one of the top Fortune 500 companies of pretty much all time, acquired Spratt's in 1950, and Purina entered the dog food market in 1956 with the first kibble. Remember a little while ago I told you when dogs were being fed horse meat, it was the golden era? Yeah, it's all downhill from here. So Purina had previously been selling food for farm animals that was plant and grain based for chickens and pigs. In 1959, they acquired the American Crab Meat Company, who made the pet food called Three Little Kittens. Now you would think buying a company with the name of American Crab Meat Company would mean that the pet food would actually have crab in it.
Well, duh.
But you already know it didn't. But it did market itself as balanced, noting it was the only cat food that actually had 16 nourishing ingredients, including more proteins, vitamins, and minerals than milk itself. You notice how they did that? Buy the American Crab Meat Company, but there's no crab meat. But wait, we're balanced, and we're the only one with 16 nourishing ingredients. and were better than milk. Talk about changing gears and you don't even notice. This was the first time balanced food was marketed requiring additional vitamins and nutrients. Purina began experimenting and they actually produced the first kibble using the process of extrusion. Extrusion is a method of mass producing shelf-stable foods by mixing wet and dry ingredients together and then fed through a machine where it is subject to extreme heat and pressure and fed through a die cutting machine to form the kibble shapes that we're familiar with today. Extruded food products are commonly coated after drying with fat such as chicken, pork, and lard to increase palatability and energy supply. Many companies will use extrusion to create food for dogs and cats. The downside, the extreme heat and drying remove beneficial vitamins, nutrients, and moisture that pets need to truly thrive. Fast forward 12 years, and wouldn't you know it, another generation of pets later, major preventable diseases such as liver and kidney failure were so prevalent that companies could actually market their products as a solution to these problems. So wouldn't you know it, this led to another trend in pet food manufacturing, the veterinary diet. Jean Catherine, a French veterinary surgeon, pioneered the idea of veterinary diets and used his own concoctions to treat pets. He registered his food with trademark Royal Canin, and Hillside's diet shortly followed in the US. Fast forward for the next 30 years between 1970
When did we get started?
and 2000s.
Go shorty, it's your birthday.
Pet food industry boomed. They were making lots of money. By the 80s and continuing into the 90s, Hill's diversified and created many prescription diets for kidney failure, liver failure, and weight management. The pet food industry boomed, with more and more options driving pet food companies to cut corners in order to remain competitive.
Plus facts on nutrition and why science diet products are sold only through veterinarians and pet food retailers. Call now. Sample Science Diet. The pet food concerned pet owners trust.
In a flooded market. Not unrelated was the rise of the vet industry. See, in 1940, there were only 10 vet schools in the US, but today there are over 30 schools, cranking out thousands of veterinarians yearly, sponsored by big kibble companies. I bet you couldn't guess that one.
No.
No way.
In 1998, a guy by the name of Steve Brown develops the first raw pet food. Steve Brown was a pioneer in the raw pet food industry. Steve started out with dog treats, and they did so well, he actually expanded to pet food. Steve used his nutritional background, knowledge from working with dog treats, to develop a pet food formula based on European standards of nutrition and the barf diet. Steve developed the very first raw pet food in the US market. It was quickly adopted by holistic vets such as Karen Becker. He did not use traditional marketing, but instead focused on education to generate sales. And years later, he sold the company. Everything was going to plan until 2007. See, by now, many companies were actually sourcing for cheap rice and wheat from China in order to cut corners. Cut costs, and without any government regulation when it comes to quality control. An outbreak of sickness and deaths began to occur. The renal disease that were making pets sick and killing them were traced back to melamine contamination, which was being added by the Chinese to the pet food in order to doctor the protein content results. Over 270 deaths were actually tied back to renal failure caused by melamine, and 5,300 brands were forced to recall their products, causing mistrust in big kibble companies. That's 5,300 brands that were cutting corners and didn't stop until your dogs were sick or dead. Remember that. Consumers began learning the FDA the same year as the melamine outbreak, but it took 5 years to get a recall on the product, and no action was actually taken until 2012.
This morning we have an update on the contaminated pet food blamed for sickening thousands of dogs and cats. More than 60 million packages were taken off store shelves last month because they apparently contained wheat gluten that was tainted with the chemical melamine. And now another company has recalled 4 more pet foods for a different reason.
Pet food recall is expanding. Could you get sick from just touching your dog food?
Pet foods to widen its recall.
Dry pet foods have been recalled, and animals aren't the only ones getting sick.
Animal lovers need to know a voluntary recall on pet foods has been expanded.
As a precaution.
It's a mystery, just like it is with how the melamine got into the wheat gluten.
Yeah.
We do know that the rice protein concentrate did come from a company in China.
Food recall is expanding again, and it's people who are getting sick. Outbreak that may
may be related to products.
2011 sees the birth of the FSMA, the Food Safety Modernization Act. It was the first pet food safety laws passed in 70 years, and it attempted to reduce contamination before actual illness could occur. It was a good intention, sweeping change for the industry, but not all for the better. It established the authority of the FDA to be able to force pet food companies to recall unsafe products. FSMA was actually good, but it also caused problems. So for example, in an attempt to prevent lost profit and consumer confidence, more companies are adding chemicals and other additives to provide taste, appearance, and shelf life, further denaturing and abusing the food that they actually provide to the customer. Now, I said all that to say this. First item we find is 10-pound bags of chicken quarters for $5.72. I'm taking 4 of the bags for a 16-day supply. Next up, we get carrots and green beans. I know 20 pounds of rice is overkill, but I'm trying to prove a point. Next up, beef kidney. You will need a crock pot and a grinder if you have puppies. You're going to add 1 cup of rice and 4 cups of water. My crock pot bowl didn't fit, so I improvised. Once you chop the chicken into pieces, you go ahead and drop it right into the grinder. A grinder like this can run you about $1,000, but depending how much you can save in a year, it is definitely well worth it. Next, we chop up the beef kidney. And yes, those are my puppies in the background. They're actually just starting to open their eyes. This meal prep is actually for their mom. If you're wondering why we added so much rice and we're lowering protein content, we'll go ahead and leave a link down below so you can see a video we did previously. After adding carrots and green beans, this is what it looks like, and this is how we set it up. This particular crock pot has option for rice and risotto. We click on that. Then we add 3 more minutes so we can make it a total of 15 minutes. This gives us plenty of time to clean up and put away the leftovers. We put away the leftovers as follows: 2 chicken quarters per bag and about 5% of beef kidney. Once bagged, we'll go ahead and put it in the freezer, take it out to thaw the morning of. And just like that, it finished cooking. We go ahead and put it in the dog's tray and we give it to our girl, Chanel. Now, don't take my word for it. You be the judge whether she likes this or not. Now, let me stop that right here real quick. That's some good coffee. So I want to talk to you about NuVet and NuJoint Plus. NuVet Plus is a multivitamin and NuJoint Plus is joint support. Now a while back, I used to feed my dogs chicken livers. So you're probably asking, why not feed my dogs chicken liver? Or even beef liver for that matter. The reason I stopped doing that is for all the steroids and growth hormones that they're putting in cows and chickens that ends up in your dogs if you're actually giving them that. So I turned to the one multivitamin that has never been recalled. And you remember earlier how I explained how kibble is cooked and whatnot? This particular multivitamin and joint support is cold pressed, and it makes a world of difference because it doesn't denature the vitamins. In addition, we have noticed that our dogs are actually consuming between 8 to 10% more of the foods that they're actually eating. I mean, the health benefits that you actually get from these 2 products put together has been nothing short than powerful in their results. We've had many people send in the results that they've actually had with these products, from dogs that were actually walking with a limp and that now are no longer limping, to overall orthopedic and health improvement, from coat to energy and everything else. What sets NuVet apart from all the other multivitamins is the ingredients that actually are in there, such as blue-green algae, brewer's yeast, cat's claw, evening primrose oil, shark cartilage, along with your usual vitamins A, E, C, and minerals like phosphorus, potassium, calcium, zinc, and selenium. Not to mention, for joint support, glucosamine, chondroitin, MSM, and vitamin C. We're going to go ahead and leave a link below, but I must tell you, you also get an additional 13% off whenever you click AutoShip. We've also found that this combination usually lasts you for about 90 days. We were able to see improvement within 2 weeks from giving NuVet and NuJoint DS. So give your pets a healthier, happier life by giving your dogs better food at a better price. Make sure to get your NuVet and NuJoint DS today. Now let's get back to it. I want to leave you guys with one piece of advice. If you leave this video and you learn how to replace the bad habit of buying kibble with feeding your dog better and saving money, do yourself and your family a favor and invest in yourself. With an app such as Cash App, You could actually buy Bitcoin for as little as $1, and you could also invest in stocks. Now, I'm not saying that this will make you rich overnight, but over time, it will get you closer to being rich than buying an overpriced bag of kibble that's actually bad for your dog. It's been Raul from theCUBE. Make sure you click on the next video.